The compact SUV remains the hottest, most crowded and fastest growing segment in India's passenger car market. This car is the best seller for the last several months and, combined with its Korean cousin alter ego, monopolizes the segment handsomely. But of late, the Germans have had something to say about it. So the Taigun is all set for its launch. The only thing we don't know, prices. So we'll have a proper segment shootout, of course, once we have the exact prices and the positioning in our hands. So you're wondering why the Hyundai Creta is here. Well, this is the segment best seller. So it kind of makes sense to tell you how they're alike and how they are also very different. Yes, our segment winner has been the Kia Seltos. But like I said, we will save that battle for when prices are out on the Taigun. So the market leader versus the newbie for now. Yes, both SUVs are starkly different when it comes to dynamics, in-car experience, overall appeal, and appearance. Now the Creta has been around for months, so we've got really used to seeing tons of them on our roads. But let's be honest, when it first drove in, at least for me, the styling, though very modern, very different, was also very weird. It's kind of strange looking, this car. You get used to it, like I said. But you know what? A lot of people love it too because of that, because it looks so different. Here you get more of the same in some senses, but that could be a huge advantage because one glance and you know it's German, and more importantly, you know it's a Volkswagen. The Taigun looks obviously compact, while the Creta gives the impression of being bigger than it is. So I spent a lot of time, right, with this car in Udaipur, and at the time I did feel like, yes, it seems small from the point of view of its segment. And then, you know, I had this feeling, you put it next to something like this, it's a bit of a Hulk, this car, it's going to seem even smaller. But you know what, good news for VW, you put them together, it doesn't look tiny as I had feared. Of course, there is a difference in dimensions though, because the Taigun is about 80 odd millimeters shorter in overall length. It's also shorter in height terms, it's not as wide as the Creta, but those differences aren't too much. The big difference though, where the Taigun does score, is on wheelbase. While the Taigun offers a 41mm longer wheelbase, which implies a trump card on cabin space, overall it is 79mm shorter, 30mm narrower, and sits 23mm lower than the Creta. And that extra bulk definitely gives the Korean more SUV cred. Now, the Hyundai Creta gets 3 powertrain options, including diesel, a naturally aspirated petrol, and a turbo petrol. The Taigun, on the other hand, offers 2 turbo petrol engines, the 1-litre 3-cylinder TSI and the bigger 1.5-litre 4-cylinder TSI motor. And yes, both engines are shared with the Škoda Kushaq. Today we are pitting the larger engine against the Creta's 1.4 turbo offering. The 1.5 TSI belts out 148 bhp and 250 Nm of peak torque. It comes mated to either a 6-speed manual transmission or a 7-speed DSG, that's a dual clutch gearbox. We have the latter with us. Now the TSI has a little bit of an edge over the Turbo GDI. I don't want to take away from the fun quotient that you get on the Creta. It is actually a lot of fun to drive. It's very refined, but this TSI comes across as more punchy, more powerful. It has the edge, as I said, with 10 bhp more. But it's not just about the numbers. You get that sense of a little bit of urgency from this engine, which is great. You also have another big trump card on the Taigun, and that is its handling. Yes, the Taigun quite evidently has better dynamics, and thank God for it. That also means that the Volkswagen-ness is intact on the car. The suspension setup is right on point for our road conditions. It doesn't dive much, and there's a hint of softness going over bumps, potholes, or rough roads, while it's still adequately agile around bends and corners. It's a well-judged ride and handling balance. The steering too feels more engaging and tactile. It's quick to your inputs and the car goes exactly where you point it. Tight overhangs, longer wheelbase, a good combination to eliminate understeer, and the tail remains in check. The only downside? These comparatively lower profile 17-inch tires that get noisy at higher speeds. Now the Creta 1.4 Turbo too feels sporty, but with a different character altogether. The 1.4 GDI motor churns out 138 bhp and 242 Nm of peak torque. It has a 7-speed dual-clutch transmission as standard. Even this is a high-revving engine, but the slight difference in power output is perceptible, more so because it's the heavier of the two. The speed build-up is comparatively linear and the shift isn't as seamless. You notice it more when you drive the cars back-to-back though. But then the Creta gets more goodies. So the Creta gets 3 different drive modes. You can put the gearbox in D or in S, that's Sport of course. Well, you can do that in the Taigun too. The engine is nice and refined, though just a little bit lesser so than on the Taigun. You get a little bit of body roll, no doubt, in this car. I remember saying that in my review as well. But it's just the sheer comfort factor that really comes through. The driver's seat, it is electrically adjustable in the top end. You can get a more of an SUV tall riding feel on this car, and yes, it's trump card, no doubt. It is ride comfort. The Creta simply shines through with its plush ride quality, inching ahead of the Taigun, especially as a chauffeur-driven ride. Lateral movement on undulations or rough roads is largely contained with a sense of firmness, and the wider footprint comes through as an advantage. Having said that, it's not as nimble around corners, and even these 17 inches protest a bit too much while pushing hard around bends. And that is exactly where the Taigun hits it right out of the park. But we can't say the same for the cabin. Well, honestly, both of them score differently on the inside. Shubham will tell you how.
Though the Taigun is not as wide as the Creta or even as long, but the sense of space given its dimension is actually commendable. The kind of legroom that you get thanks to that extra 41mm wheelbase is actually good. I am 5 feet 10 inches tall and the driver's seat is positioned at my driving position, and I have around 6 to 7 inch of legroom here. And then the window line is quite low, the dark bits are not as dark, and so you get a really good feel of airiness inside this cabin. Even the seats, they are quite comfortable. The thigh support is good, and you get side support here just in case your driver gets a bit too excited, so you are in your position. Actually, for 5 it is a bit tight here, but for 4, if you are a small family, this is the car to be in. You will feel really comfortable in here.
The overall layout of the cabin and design of the dash are nicely done. The 10-inch screen is precisely integrated in the dash, and it has a very user-friendly interface. Then you got the digital instrument cluster on the top-end GT line DSG, which is a big bonus, kind of like the T-Rock's virtual instrument cluster. The Taigun does miss out on a few creature comforts like a proper panoramic sunroof, power-adjustable driver seat, both of which the Creta has. The Creta also has a color-themed cluster depending on your drive mode. But both get smartphone connectivity and a connected car suite. The latter is more comprehensive on the Hyundai. The VW though gets wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, wireless App Connect, and a steering that is adjustable for both reach and rake. You don't get those on the Creta. That said, the quality of plastics and materials could have been better.
Now the Creta is wider and the shoulder room is more in here. But the sense of space, that's a bit compromised compared to the Taigun, and more because of this all black interiors. But on the plus side, you do get sporty elements like this red highlights on the aircon vents and the flat bottom steering wheel, which also has this contrast red stitching here. So feels very sporty and also a bit premium thanks to these quality of materials. and you get more features in here. So panoramic sunroof you have, which you don't have in the Taigun, and also you have ventilated seats on top variants. And surprisingly, in the Taigun, ventilated seats are offered on non-GT line variants and only on 1-liter engine options.
The 10.25-inch touchscreen infotainment system on the Creta is marginally bigger, offers more functionality too. It is seamlessly integrated in the dash, and the overall layout of the cabin is very streamlined yet sporty. This is the turbo, don't forget. It feels plusher of the two with better surfacing, and yes, that premium Bose surround sound system is a big takeaway. You also get an inbuilt air purifier on the Creta, a big plus. Stuff like LED headlights with daytime running lights, LED tail lights, ambient lighting, auto-dimming mirror, wireless phone charging, auto climate control are common features for both SUVs. Not a big fan though of the touch-sensitive AC controls on the Taigun, as it needs your focused attention, something you can't do while driving. On safety, both SUVs are well loaded. Features like 6 airbags, anti-lock braking or ABS with electronic brake force distribution or EBD, electronic stability control or ESC, traction control, hill hold control, tire pressure warning and ISOFIX child seat mounts are in both cars at the top end. No crash test ratings with us for either though. So which is better? Well, we need the Taigun's prices and a broader comparison that includes cars like the Kushaq and Seltos to decide. The Taigun GT will, however, be the driver's car in this segment, that much is sure. But for now, given what we know, the Creta holds an edge in the Indian context. It is more car per car, quite simply put. A proper verdict though, only when we get the cousins and the others into the fray.